Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and tonight I'm joined by Sean Connolly and Kevin McCluskey. And we're here to talk about Motherwell 0, Celtic 3. Sean, you predicted 3-0, mate. Well done.
Yeah, and I put my money where my mouth was. I had Luke McCowan, anything goal scorer as well, so happy with that. Thanks to Lewis Palma for securing that win for me with that chance he had at the end to make it 4. He knew I had a coupon on and he put it wide for me. Thanks,
Of course he
thanks
did.
Lewis Palma.
Big smile from Lewis Palma at the end. But we were all smiling. Let's break it down then. Up until the first goal, Kev, it was a story of two midfielders. McCowan made his first start today. I think he showed up really well.
I think he did also, yeah. I thought he was, like we said at half-time, he was kind of the catalyst for us taking control of the game. Up until then, it had been the other midfielder, Lennon Miller, who looked the most promising player in the park. And then I think the goal comes from McCowan. We step up after that. And I'll throw another midfielder in who I thought was pretty good, especially in that second half, was Rio Hatate. I thought he was at the heart of most of the good things that we did. I think he's got a role in the last 2 goals. And really, overall, it was despite that start with them hitting the post and the bar, after that, I thought it was a really comfortable match for us. You know, Motherwell gave us as much of a game as they possibly could, but in the end, I thought our class and strength and everything just shone through, and it was pretty comfortable.
Yeah, it did feel like that. I mean, it wasn't like a steamrollered performance, Sean, and I don't think we were at our best, far from it. But we were speaking a lot about Lennon Miller of Motherwell having 2 chances and then McCowan opening the score, and we were kind of bigging him up before the game, what he was good at. And, you know, this type of game's bread and butter for Luke McCowan, isn't it? And I think that, you know, that there'll come a point where we stop going on about the fact that he's a Celtic fan and all that kind of stuff and just judge him as the performances start coming in.
Yeah, like it's a tough call to say who was best in ground, as you know, who's the player of the match, and McCowan would certainly be probably the shout, but you could also put a case for Baye or even for Johnston, particularly in the second half. The second goal that he scores, the header, is a great one. But yeah, McCowan, Johnston both got goals, both had great overall performances. I think Baye finishes with 2 assists.
Yeah.
They get hooked in the hour, but like, you know, that's because they've put in a shift midweek and they've run the race today. I get what Kev's saying about Hatate was better second half, but he was dead in his feet with 15 minutes to go, and he shouldn't have been finishing that game. We should have been having a sub to get him off because there was a point like with 10 minutes to go where he was just a passenger. But yeah, fair enough. Before that, he was dynamic and doing well, but we did actually look like we were suffering from a European hangover. We did, but we also showed enough quality and did enough and had enough fight and all the things that we had in the first half against Aberdeen, not the second. We had them today, and Motherwell's not an easy game. Any away game is a difficult game, especially when you're traveling back from Italy. So 3-0 is good, you know.
Solid, absolute solid. And this isn't because I want to continually go on about a Motherwell player, but there was loads of comments at halftime because we had been speaking about the chances that Lennon Miller had. A lot of people said, how can we not produce a player of 18 years of age who's making that kind of impact? Now, the reason I bring that up isn't actually about Lennon Miller. It's about Friday night, where Gordon Strachan joined us on stage at Barra's Art and Design. And it was a phenomenal night because anybody who's seen him in action will know that basically he could have been a stand-up comic if he wasn't a footballer. His storytelling is hilarious. I'm not sure how much it is true, but he had the whole place in stitches. But in the second half of these nights, we give the opportunity to the crowd to ask questions. And one of the best questions of the night was, please ask Gordon what happened to that review he was meant to be doing for Celtic. Right? Now, was it 2 Januaries ago? He was meant to be doing this review, right? Was it 2, maybe even 3 Januaries ago? Anyway, he took it in the manner in which it was intended, a wee bit tongue-in-cheek. But what he did say was 2 things that stuck with me. The first thing is that the club are now beginning to implement a lot of his actions, you know. So he's written a report. This is all his findings, and this is what he would advise them to do. Now, he didn't try and take credit for Paul Tisdale or the change of the operation, but he was saying that a lot of what he has suggested has been put into fruition and action. I I mean, we've seen quite a bit, haven't we? We've seen the Barrafield development, we've seen the restructuring of the football department. So that was really interesting because it's not something that I had linked to anything Gordon Strachan was doing with a review. He mentioned it on Friday night, and we're thinking, brilliant. He also took the opportunity to rip Gavin Strachan about using an iPad and all that, because Gordon is of the firm belief that there's too much onus on data. He believes that it's a tool and a tool only. He was brilliant. But one thing that he came up with, which I thought was pretty shocking, but it's where we are in this game at the moment, is that Celtic gave a kid or a number of kids of a young age 4-year deals. And they were all living somewhere else. Let's say the region was Lothian and Borders or wherever they were staying. And they had to go to Glasgow X amount of times a week. So Gordon worked it out. And by the time the 4 years was up, they would have travelled round the world twice. And what he also did is he identified how many touches of a football they were getting per session. Right? He said, I could take a ball right now and kick it off that wall in an hour and have 1,000 touches of ball, which exceeded what these kids were getting in a week travelling to Glasgow. So he says there's so many things that have to change within the development of football players. So it doesn't answer directly the question why we can't put in an 18-year-old. But it's pretty clear, Kev, that there's a lot wrong at the moment, and we're going to have to put it right. Strachan also bemoans the lack of a reserve league. Big John Hartson backed him up on that. So it's interesting that a lot of what they're saying is what we're talking about on this show as well, Kev, time and time again.
Yeah, it just shows that sometimes we know what we're talking about, right?
I wouldn't go that far.
I said sometimes, not every time. But yeah, I think it's I think the introduction of a reserve league is one thing, would really help our cause and be able to give an 18-year-old a chance in the first team at some point, because it's virtually impossible for an 18-year-old to come through the ranks and make it at Celtic these days because of the pressure that's on that young player coming through. One of the last ones to do it was Kieran Tierney, and Tierney only got his chance because there were injuries, there were suspensions, and the next boy in line was away on loan at Inverness Cally Thistle. He was fourth choice left back at the club, and he got in. Otherwise, he wouldn't have got near the team, at least not at that stage. He'd have to wait at least another year, probably, to get in. It's just really, really difficult. One of the last ones that we had high hopes for, or the last two most recent ones, Daniel Kelly and Rocco Vata. So who's Kelly getting a game ahead of? Is it Callum McGregor, Atati, last season Matt O'Reilly? You're never putting them in ahead of them. I just think it's really difficult. So we need to have a proper pathway to get players in the team, and that's what we don't have at the moment. A reserve league would definitely help because it should be more competitive than playing in the Lowland League. It's either that or we go down the route of having a proper feeder club down the system somewhere, or a proper B team even that can come up the leagues. Because right now, I think for a club of our size, it's just really difficult to get someone in, unless the player's got exceptional talent. Because I would say if we signed somebody like Lennon Miller, he would struggle to get a game for us just now. And if he does get a game, there's going to be folk in his back as soon as he makes a mistake, and he doesn't get that at Motherwell. He gets the chance to make mistakes. He gets the chance to play games, and by the time he leaves them, you mentioned this at the half time and never really picked up on it. He's probably going to go abroad, but he'll go abroad having played 100 games of first team football for Motherwell or close to, and he'll be a first team player for wherever he goes, because he's not going to come into the pressure environment of a club like Celtic, and that's the thing that I think really prevents young players from making it unless they're truly exceptional.
Yeah. Listen, we're not going to dedicate the entire post-match to a Motherwell player, but there was a lot of comments and they're still coming in. Big Red says, why have we not bought him? I think one of the biggest reasons Big Red is obviously his old fella, ex-professional, took him out of Celtic as a young guy. I think he was maybe 14 years of age. He was at Celtic, took him out of there, and went to Motherwell, and he's been proven right for making that decision because, as Kev says, he's played the games that he would never have got at Celtic Park, and it looks as though they want to move him down south or maybe to Italy, somewhere else outside of Scottish football. Thanks everybody for getting involved in the chat. How did you think we played today? That was the first goal, Luke McCowan on his first appearance, and you're sitting at 1-0. You're thinking to yourself that it could go either way at that point, because Motherwell had a few decent chances, and then Alistair Johnston pops up. He's a player, Sean, that you mentioned at half time. He was captain in the club today until Carter Vickers came on. We'll come back to him in a moment, and he scores a goal. But not only Alistair Johnston, don't just want to focus on him, also want to focus on Baye. Now, if we think back to his debut, where he was kind of bullied by the ex-Celtic Hearts right winger that was playing for Falkirk, there was a lot of people in the comment section, as so often happens with the old knee-jerk reactions, who were already writing him off. But I do think he's progressed and developed into a game, and he's also added a couple of assists as well. I thought he played really well until he was taken off when Carter Vickers came on.
Yeah, and look, you're talking about youth players, and I think really the problem is quality, isn't it? Because Daniel Kelly's gone down to Millwall and played all of 65 minutes so far in the English Championship and EFL Cup. Rocco Vata's played 222 minutes, so it's not like these players have got the quality to break into lower divisions in England. So, and then Baye we're talking about here is only 20. Mm-hmm. If Celtic had a Scottish player with the same quality as Baye, he would be playing, and people would be climbing over each other to talk this guy up if he was Scottish, 20-year-old playing with that level of quality. People are really giving him a hard judgment to start with because he's not Scottish. He's not one of our players. He's unknown. We're developing someone else's player, so they're not. They need him to play now because we're not developing a player for the future. And he's shown that quality now that everyone thought he had, that Barcelona think he has, and that's why they're extending his contract. And as for Johnston, he was tireless today. There was actually a point just before, even though he had a few slack passes in the first half in particular, there was a point in the second half where I was starting to get really frustrated with James Forrest because Johnston just kept overlapping, and Forrest kept coming back inside to play safe. Cycling the ball over, and okay, fair enough, that does actually lead to the second goal, but there was a lot of runs just that Forrest was not looking for him, whereas when Kuhn comes on, Kuhn's closer to the byline, it's faster, and Johnston's runs were then being seen, not always been picked out, but being seen and sometimes picked out. So I think it made a difference to Johnston as well when Kuhn was on.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And we were talking about that relationship that he seems to be building up on that right-hand side. And we were talking about him, Engels and Kuhn, breaking up the park quite well and attack. Obviously, Engels was on the bench, as was Kuhn today. Baye, I mean, who would the Scottish player be if it wasn't Baye? Who would be coming through, Kevin? It would probably be Adam Montgomery, right? Now, Montgomery came into the side. Matthew Anderson's done well. I think he's done well. Is he away out on loan? Is Anderson away out on loan?
Went back to Admira Wacker.
Yeah. So I think you're right, Sean. It comes to the point where the gaffer will know. And I always think back to a conversation I had with Stephen Sullivan, who wrote one of the best Celtic books ever. That was the Celtic's Iron Man, the Sean Fallon story. And he used to work for the Celtic View. And basically, he would do loads of the reserve stuff, loads of the first team stuff, and all that kind of writing for the View and all that. And he always said to me that Martin O'Neill had this kind of view that he didn't really need to know what was happening with the young guys or the reserve. He didn't need to know. And Willie McStay was just to come to him and tell him when he had a player ready for the first team. So these guys cannot be ready for Brendan Rodgers' first team if we still work that way, Kev. So it's frustrating for us because we see wee bits of players, we think, oh, he looks good. And, I've heard a lot of chat over the last couple of weeks because Johnny Kenny's doing well away on loan. But from what I've heard on the inside of the club, he's miles off being a Celtic player. So, you can only take from what you've seen when it comes to a young player. Baye is obviously a different level, a different standard of player than we've produced in recent times.
Oh, yeah, clearly. For Johnny Kenny, I watched him last season. I think it was Shamrock Rovers play out here against Ferencváros, and he looked a decent target man. But I'm going to say if he's playing in Scottish football, he's the kind of player that would do well at Motherwell or Dundee United. that seemed to be his level. And I've seen that he is scoring goals in the League of Ireland, but again, I think that's levels. He can be decent there, but not quite make it here. For the rest of it, yeah, I've got a feeling Brendan Rodgers is a little bit more hands-on when it comes to the young players and their development than Martin O'Neill would have been. Clearly, there's something not going quite right. Otherwise, there would be players knocking on the door. And we do see it. We have these glimpses every pre-season. There's a young player. I think this year we had Colby Donovan right back. We had Turley in the midfield.
I like to look at Turley. Yeah,
I like to look at him as well. And so there's always one or two players that will get a game or two and look decent. But we've got to remember it's pre-season. So for the other team, it's a fitness exercise as well. We take it maybe that little bit more seriously. So did the young boys because it's a chance to impress. But ultimately, they're not doing it enough. Maybe in training where it matters, or in the B team, or maybe they are doing well. And someone's coming to Brendan and saying, "Look, we've got these guys," but he's turning around as well and saying, "Where do I fit him in the team?" Because we've got Baye now at left back, who is better, in my opinion, than Matthew Anderson, who would be the next in line as the next Scottish player coming through. We've got Engels, McCowan, Hattati, Bernardo, McGregor in midfield. It's going to be really difficult for Turley to make it. So it's like we said before, it's just really, really difficult for these guys. They have to be an exceptional talent, or there has to be an injury or a suspension that gives them a chance to get in, and then they've got to grasp it. And very few of them have actually managed to do that in the last decade or 2 decades.
The thing, some of the guys you've mentioned there, so you look at Engels and you look at his development, and I only knew the nuts and bolts of this because Scott Coy from the Belgian Football Podcast came on and explained it. He got his move because he got lots of games for the Club Brugge reserve side, which is in the tier, just underneath the first team, Club Next. So he went in there, Kevin, got all this first team experience that our guys are not getting. They're simply not getting it at a high level, if you know what I mean. And similar to Baye, we all know he was out on loan. He was playing competitive football at 18, 19 years of age. So it's one of these big things that obviously Gordon Strachan's looked at as well in this report. Tony Cassidy's asking if it was publicised. It never was published, Tony, which I think, it just popped up every now and again. It popped up on the comments, and then somebody asked about it on Friday. Maybe once everything becomes a success, they'll take a wee nod to Gordon and go, "Oh, cheers, Gordon. It was you that suggested all these great, things that we've managed to improve the background team and the structure and the youth academy." But Gordon probably won't take the credit for that. Martin McGarity, welcome to the show. You're chatting on YouTube. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We've got just about 1,200 live all in. Many of you are chatting on the YouTube channel. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel. It's free of charge. We stream every day. We cover every game. And on a Friday night, we have This Is Acsom, fully produced show with a real, I don't know, it's an interesting selection of guests that we've had so far. Next week, it's going to be Mick Lynch. Very good performance, especially after a difficult away game in Europe. Squad size and quality will play a big part in the success this season. Now, the reason I brought this up, Sean, wee bit of a diversion, I guess. I agree with I really do. I agree with Martin. It's all about tapping into the squad. Now, on Wednesday night, we'll be focusing on our game against Dundee. We'll be covering it, as always, on Acsom. But the other two teams that are in the top three, Aberdeen and Rangers, will go head-to-head at Pittodrie. Everybody I speak to who have got any kind of passing interest in Scottish football always go on about Aberdeen are doing well, but, and there's always the but. And more often than not, but they don't have the squad depth. They're doing well just now, but over a season they'll drop off. Well, they seem to still be racking up the points. I looked at yesterday's game, beating Dundee United 1-0, almost 20,000 at Pittodrie, a bit of an old school vibe going on there. And they just keep racking up the results. They drew with us last week. What do you think is going to happen on Wednesday night? And if they were to come out of that game unscathed, will people have a different view on the challenge that they pose?
I don't think so, no. Because, and it's, well, you can call it disrespectful if you want. You have to give them their respect for what they've done, undefeated since March. But at the same time, 9 games in and their goal difference is +10. So, what does that tell you? Do you know what I mean? They're overachieving because of their mentality. Their manager he's got a lot of the Brendan Rodgers about him, and he's doing a lot of the mental coaching of players. Which is more important, or not more important, but it's a strength for some coaches above the actual tactical coaching. So I don't know if he's got helping him with the tactical, but his mental coaching is great. I heard the interview with him after the game yesterday, and I can't remember what it was, but it was like any chat about like emotion or like getting worked up or anything. It was just another game, they start like, no, we respect the opponents, we prepare the same for every game, we stay humble, and like all their players are contributing. The one thing that I've noticed that they do different, the only thing that's different is that they make subs at halftime a lot. And the players that come on contribute as well. And it's like players that were absolute squad players. Like the top scorer in the SPFL at the moment is Papagaye, who was an absolute squad player for them, sent out on loan, and now he's the top scorer in the SPFL. So he's getting a turn out of players that were squad players before, and he's also like, and that means that when he needs to change it in a game, he can change it in a game, and that's helping them as well. But I do think they are above where their ability is, and I think they will regress. But that's not to say they won't ride it for a little bit longer. If you remember back to Derek McInnes season where I think was it Ronnie Dela was in charge, and they took us all the way to the post split before we beat them and won the league that year. But I think it'll be more like that than anything. I don't think they'll seriously challenge. But and I'll tell you one thing, I'm getting really, really, really annoyed about this lazy media sycophancy, whatever you want to call it. Every time someone says the term split the old firm, I want to reach into whatever device I'm listening on and rip out the larynx of the person that says it for suggesting that Celtic could potentially finish third. Don't be lazy. Say what you mean. Say that you think Aberdeen will finish above Lazarus, okay? Because we know what you're actually saying there. Stop it. Thank you.
No, listen, the big thing for me in a scenario like this, and I've used some examples in the past where teams have run out of steam. They absolutely have run out of steam. They've done so well up to a certain point in a season, and then they've hibsed it, basically. And I've said that once we come to January, there will have to be some ambition shown. If Aberdeen want to keep this going, there will have to be some ambition shown by the club at that stage. And you're probably talking to the tune of 3 players minimum, and you ask yourself, well, sometimes we don't even sign 3 players in a January transfer window. Will Aberdeen do that? So it's going to be interesting during the week to see where that is. A lot of people are I don't know, they're willing to die on a hill for this one. I'm maybe one of the worst because I'm urging Aberdeen to come second this season. I'm sure most of us would enjoy that. What do you make of it, Kev? Because there does come the point where, they scraped a win against Dundee United, or they could have been beaten by Celtic because our possession was so much superior to theirs in the second half. Aye, but there's, I don't know if it's momentum or it's the mentality that Sean was talking about that seems to have been implemented by the manager. Week in, week out, they're still there. Their goal difference isn't great. I mean, when we look at the top 3, Celtic sitting pretty with 24 of a goal difference on 25 points. Aberdeen, same points tally, 14 goals worse off in the difference. And then Rangers' goal difference is 8. They scraped a win against St Mirren at Ibrox today, and they're on 19. So still 6 points of a difference. Is it one of the ones, Kev, that will probably reserve judgment until after the new year in relation to what Aberdeen are going to get this season?
Probably. But for the time being, we can judge them on what they've done up to this point in the season. And I think it's fantastic. I think it's brilliant for Scottish football. I, as a Celtic fan, want to see a strong Aberdeen because it's been a long time since we've had one. And I'm with Sean on this one. It's not about them splitting the old firm, which doesn't exist anymore in any case. It's about them finishing above Rangers, and I think they've got it within them to do it this season, judging by what we've seen. Thailand's come in, he's got them well organised. He's brave as a manager because, like Sean's pointed out as well, he makes changes at half time, and very few managers do that. He'll spot something that's not working and he'll make a change and he'll do it early. If he waits until the hour mark last weekend, then the game's out of sight and Celtic will win it 3-0. because we were in control. He saw what was wrong from the Aberdeen side. He made the change, and it paid off for him. And I don't think it's the first time he's done it this season. They've got something about them. Like, they've lost 4 games this season on XG, if you believe that, or if you look at those stats.
Strachan
So
says
what
data's
he's got about them,
I'm not arguing
but
with
just like Strachan says, aye. So yeah, XG wise, they've lost 4 games this season, but they're still unbeaten in actual goals because they're just ruthless and they're efficient. I would love to see them win on Wednesday night. I think they've got it within them to win on Wednesday night. And if they do, again, they've still got money left over from Miovski's sale in the summer. If they can
Yes.
invest that, then good on them and bring on the challenge, because I would totally welcome it to come from them. I still firmly believe that come the end of the season, Celtic will be champions. I think our squad is bigger and stronger than anyone else's. If Aberdeen's got 3 or 4 million sitting in the bank from Miovski, we've got 75 or whatever it is still. We can invest again if we need to in January. But for now, all credit to Aberdeen for what they've done. Let's hope they can keep it going for at least another couple of weeks and get a result. No, one more week, sorry, or one more week, midweek rather.
One more game.
Midweek.
One more game.
One more game. Yes, I was getting ahead of myself because I was forgetting the cup semi-final. But if they can do it, if they can keep it going in the league for another couple of weeks, anyway, we'll see. Then good on them. But January is going to be massive for them. I think they will need to invest, and we'll see how stronger they emerge from the transfer window. But it's going to be interesting this season, which makes it something worth looking forward to.
Game on. The big thing is, we talk about investment. You can bring in a player who makes a difference, like Kevin Nisbet, and it's not like you're spending £2.5 million or £2 million on a player. There are players out there if your recruitment is set up in such a way that you can unearth them. And that's just me talking about a guy that we were aware of because he played up in Scotland before. I mean, obviously he'll have his own knowledge of his own regions as well. So we'll see how that one progresses. I'm going to just ask the question straight off the bat from John McBurney, who is commenting on YouTube. I'll ask you first, Sean, did we miss McGregor?
I think we definitely did first half, and then we kind of grew into the game, especially when we went 1-0 up. It settled us a bit. Bernardo was much better second half than he was first half. I would still say that we missed McGregor, though. The two chances early on, obviously, Motherwell hit the post and the bar. And then, for some reason, just for the rest of the game, the commentator just kept saying, could have been so different, could have been so... I got a lot, and I was like, just stop saying that. Like, it could have been so different if also the referee had given the correct decision and sent off Stephen O'Donnell and given us a penalty. You know, could have been so different if Hitate's hitting, or Idah, hitting the post goes in, and it could have been 5-0.
It's laboured. They totally continually went on about it, didn't they?
Wishful thinking is what it was. Yeah, we'd missed them first half for sure, but we did settle into it. I'm not sure it's a concern, but it's a thought.
Yeah, what about yourself, Kevin? Because it was commented on during the game that often, and I think we're all kind of bad for this, I think we're all guilty of it from time to time, often he's taken for granted, and then you take him out of the team and you're thinking, wow, that's not an easy role to play.
Yeah, no, I agree with Sean. First half he was definitely missed, and we touched on that at half time. You see just how big of an influence he's got when he's not there. You know, he's got one when he is there, but you definitely notice it when he's not. So I think first half we missed him, and then, like I said as well, the second half I thought was pretty comfortable, and it's because the midfield stepped up. Bernardo looked more assured of himself in the 6. I thought Hitate up until like that 75-minute mark was the Hitate that we love to see, because he was wanting the ball, he was trying to make things happen. He's got a role to play in the second and third goals. McCowan, I thought, was just really good for the whole time he was on the park. And then Engels comes off the bench, maybe with something to prove. And sometimes you see the standard drop when a player comes off the bench. It didn't when Engels came on. So it's encouraging the second half performance that we can play without Callum, but I'd far rather we had him available and playing every week if possible.
Yeah, without a doubt. There's another player I want to talk about before we go to that switch at the back, which was quite interesting. We didn't predict it, but we said we would have liked to have seen it before the game, you know, with Trusty and Carter Vickers playing alongside each other. But there's a different element to that, and that's the fact that we just stuck Scales at left back rather than bringing Taylor on. That's fair enough. But before we do that, I want to talk about Adam Idah. There was a comment in relation to us overspending on Adam Idah. Now, he's not paying his money back with a goal against Motherwell when we're already winning the game. But I think that when he came on, we said this, Sean, didn't we? There's going to be moments this season that Adam Idah will pop up. If it's not a third goal and a 3-0 win at Fir Park, it could be, the third goal against Rangers as he did last season. It could be coming on and make the big difference against Motherwell at Fir Park, or the 2 goals against Hibs. He is, Scottish Cup final, of course, he is going to make an impact this season. And I think a few folk have been a wee bit harsh on him. Not as harsh, however, as the tackle on him. That was a shocker, wasn't it? You're going quiet, mate.
Sorry, yeah, it was a clear red. I get why the ref doesn't see it at full speed, especially since Idah bounces right back up before he limps and goes back down. But yeah, I don't know what the Motherwell player is thinking at that point. 3-0 down. What is he hoping to achieve there? Is he? The only thing I can think is he's deliberately trying to injure him. He maybe has some sort of skin in a different game coming up where he doesn't want Celtic having a fit striker, because otherwise that's just a morally corrupt thing to do, and he deserved to get a red.
It was a horrible challenge. We were talking about, obviously, the big talking point in terms of the ref and the officials in the first half being that penalty, which obviously Idah went down, ball ends up in the net, we don't get anything for it. They got it wrong, and I'm hoping that they admit that at some point down the line when Willie Collum comes out to talk about it. But eventually they got the red card right. It had to go to VAR, but Kev, it just showed that, sometimes it's got its uses in Scottish football. But I'm concerned because Idah limped for the rest of the game after that.
He did. So on the decision itself, that's why we need VAR, and this is one of the times when it's worked, and thankfully it worked in our favour because, like Sean said, that's a horrendous tackle. You can see it. You saw it in full speed live, and it looked a shocker. So I was a bit surprised it was only a yellow in full speed. But then I always think it's times maybe I've just seen that through the green tinted specs, and it wasn't as bad as all that. Every single angle afterwards, it just gets worse, and you don't even need to slow it down. You just need to see it from a different view. And Idah's ankle goes at a very strange angle. It's a sore one. And it is a concern afterwards now because he limped around for the next couple of minutes afterwards. The game was over. If we could maybe just have taken him off and played with 10 men for the last few minutes because it looked a painful one, and you've just got to hope that he's not done himself any extra damage by playing on, because he'll be important for us over the next few weeks. But for whoever it was that brought up the comment before about Idah and his 9 million and did we overspend for him? 9 million is the fee that you pay for a striker these days if you want a quality player. Idah came up and scored his big goals last season. He scored at Ibrox. He scored the last-minute goal in a cup final that wins us that game. He scored big goals at smaller venues like Fir Park and Easter Road and big games that helped us win matches. If it wasn't for him, we don't win the league last season. He was important. You can't put a price on goals like that. 9 million is what you pay for a striker in the Championship if he's a top level one. And again, like Sean mentioned, the boy that Norwich signed to replace him cost more. So it's the going rate. I'd also flip it again to whoever it was that commented on it. I'm sorry, I can't remember who it was. Would you prefer that we backed out of Idah's transfer and went and signed somebody at 3 million because that's a normal price range, and then you would class it as a project signing, someone that comes in not knowing the club, hadn't had the experience with us that Idah had. So I think it's a lot of money for us because we're not used to spending it. It's the going rate now, and Idah will repay that with goals, and he's done it again today. And he will continue to do it in future matches unless guys like Gordon are targeting him with those kind of horror challenges.
Well, I'm just looking at him this season because, people, I think it's because he made such an impact last season. People are thinking he's not been as good this time round. I mean, he scored in the Champions League. He's only played 449 minutes and scored 4 goals. So it's not quite a goal every game if you're chopping that down to 90 minutes, but it's not far off it. He's still been pretty prolific, and I think there will be big moments this season for him. The final talking point I want to bring up, Sean, I'll come to you on this one. We were talking about, it was raised in the comments, it was a good point. When are we going to see CCV and Trusty? And I was looking at it going, I would like to see it, but not to the detriment of Scales, because he doesn't deserve to be dropped. And when the change was made today, and Alistair Johnston gives Carter Vickers the captain's armband, that's indeed what he did. He just moved Scales over to left back and took Baye off, who obviously needed a rest at that point. There wasn't enough action for us to see that it was going to be a great partnership and all this, but I would like to see a wee bit more of that. I'd like to see both of those centre-halves playing in their natural positions at centre-back. I don't think Liam Scales is as good as a left-back. We've seen a bit of him, didn't we, in his first season. I wasn't convinced about Liam Scales as a left-back, but Taylor's going to be fit soon enough. But when you get an opportunity, I don't think it's going to be regarded as being dropped, is it? If Liam Scales didn't start on Wednesday night, you just think, well, he's getting rested. It's fine.
Yeah, and until it becomes like 2 or 3 games in a row, and then you look back and go, in fact, he was dropped. I think when we did make the changes, Scales was a downgrade at left back, but Baye played a lot of football this week, so that it felt necessary if we weren't going to bring Taylor on. And I thought that Carter Vickers looked a bit nervous and a bit shaky, but he also looked strong. So like he covered himself, even though he didn't look assured. The first thing, his first contribution to the game is to give Motherwell a corner when the keeper's about to pick the ball up. So he did look nervy, but you need to get on the pitch. You need to get those minutes. That's how you get back into match fitness and match sharpness. So I'm not overly concerned about it, but I'd hope we don't see that back four too often.
Well, I'm expecting Carter Vickers to start on Wednesday night. I'm going to come to you, Kev. If he does, who's the back four? I mean, Taylor's fit. He's sitting on the bench. Schmeichel is a given. Right back Johnston, for me, he's a given. How do you start? What's your back five?
I'm one of those folks that doesn't really want to make changes unless they're really necessary. I think you build up consistency in your selection, so I've got to go Schmeichel in goals. Johnson's at right back. For me, Baye is at left back. He's got the jersey and he's playing really well. Unless there's an injury, you play him. If we have to bring Carter Vickers back in, I'd bring him in for Trusty. And then you get the old gang back together with the CCV and Scales. But that's only if we have to play him. Otherwise, I would stick with the Trusty and Scales for the time being. It's working. We're playing pretty well. I don't know. Unless someone needs a rest, I wouldn't change it.
What about yourself, Sean? Do you expect Carter Vickers to come back in?
I don't, actually. That said, it is a home game. And it's the Cup next weekend.
Mm-hmm.
I think he will come back in for one game, and then I think we go back to Trusty and Scales next weekend, I think.
Yeah, it would not surprise me. Listen, thanks everybody for getting involved. One last thing I'm going to bring up. Give us a quick word. Gordon says, born Celtic, die Celtic. We all know his response to that. Velocity. But the best story for me that Gordon tells is when he is at Aberdeen, his best mate is Mark McGee. And obviously that has continued throughout his football career as a player and as a manager. And I don't know if it was a particular agent actually got Gordon Strachan a move to Cologne. And so he decides with his wife after conversations, let's go to Germany. Let's start a new life over there, a new culture. We'll learn a language. It'll be great. And Gordon Strachan, Mark McGee, and the respective wives would meet up for meals and be in each other's houses and all the rest of it. So Gordon sells this to Mark McGee. You should come over with us. Come to Germany with us. I'll put you in touch with the agent. He'll get you a move. So that all happens, and Mark McGee gets a move to Hamburg, and Gordon Strachan decided he didn't want to go to Germany anymore, and he signs for Manchester United instead. McGee had to go to Germany, and him and his family moved over there, and Gordon still finds that funny to this day. It's not like you're just moving down the road, Kev, just lock, stock, and smoking barrel all over to Germany, and Gordon signs for Man United instead. He got fined for it. I'm sure he speaks about it in his book. He got fined for signing and then going back on the agreement, reneging on the agreement. But he was ripping Mark McGee to shreds. Poor Mark. What was his nickname, Mark McGee? Dingus. It was Dingus, wasn't it? Mark
Don't
McGee.
remember.
I'll bounty your knowledge on that one.
I think Dingus McGee was a character on the telly. Someone in the comment section from that era will be able to tell us who Dingus McGee was. And I think his teammates called him Dingus. So there we go. We will be back tomorrow, as usual, at 12:30 for the Monday Bulletin. We had a comment on the comment section from Quinny, who will be joining us at some point on the live stream during the week. So it'll be great to see Quinny joining the team. And if you haven't done so already, give us a thumbs up on the video, subscribe to the channel. And if you want to come and see John Collins live with a Celtic State of Mind, tickets are going really well, but there is a link underneath this video. Thanks everybody for getting involved. And thank you to Sean and Kevin for joining me on a Celtic State of Mind.